Hello guys, welcome sa second episode ng G1 Podcast. I am your host, Christian Ancheta, and I am joined by my fellow members. Guys, introduce yourselves naman isa-isa.
I am AGCANAS. You can call me ARIEN.
I'm John Robert BRIZ. You can call me Robert.
I'm Danilo de la CRUS. You can call me Danilo.
I am Miguel AGNO. You can just call me Migs or Miguel.
Hello, my name is Kyle Anjay Carlos.
So yeah, start na tayo siguro. Ang ating mga topics na pag-uusapan today is more about ethical frameworks from various philosophies. So starting off with the first topic, let's hear Mr. ARIEN AGCANAS about a relevant issue with regards to ethics.
Okay, so starting off with the first relevant issue regarding ethics is an ethical issue in healthcare. So this is the ethical issue of euthanasia or physician-assisted suicide. So regarding this topic, I have found articles about the ethical problems of euthanasia, and the articles that I saw provided statements on why euthanasia should be allowed. Euthanasia is argued to be a civilized society should allow people to die in dignity and without pain, and should allow others to help them do so if they cannot manage it. They also said that our bodies are our own and we should be allowed to do what we want with it. And they added that suicide is not a crime and euthanasia should not be a crime. But the article also provided statements on why euthanasia should not be allowed. Like religious opponents of euthanasia believe that life is given by God, so therefore God should decide when to end it. And other opponents is the legal side, wherein laws regulating it would be abused and people would be killed even if they don't want to die. So for now, euthanasia is illegal in most countries, and only a handful members of countries made euthanasia legal. So in summary, the articles wants to ask about the question: does an individual who has no hope of recovery have the right to decide how and when to end their life? So, in my opinion, I am a pro in euthanasia, since I think that we should be able to decide when, if we can end our life. So, for example, you're in life support and your family keeps on paying the bills, but you are just delaying the you're just delaying I'm sorry. You're just delaying the part when you will die. So something like that. So I think that if that happens to me, I think that euthanasia is something that I would consider. That's all for my opinions regarding the state.
Yeah, ako naman siguro, in terms of euthanasia, mag-add lang siguro ng fact before share yung opinion ko. Actually, in the Philippines, illegal to eh. Illegal pa siya. In the 1997 Philippine state.
Mostly nga lahat ng maraming ang legal. Parang onti lang yung legal yung euthanasia.
Oo, tapos sa tingin ko feeling ko sa mga kanyan ang tawag dito, mga mayamang countries tapos hindi siya ganun ka-religious na country, unlike sa Philippines na more on Catholics talaga. Tapos syempre alam niyo naman yung parang church, yung simbahan, di ba, meron nga tayong mga hindi nila sinusuportan yung abortion kasi pagpatay na rin yung tao. So parang siguro nandun na rin yung scope na to na euthanasia na na iba lang yung parang circumstances ng tao na yon. So, imbes na bata, ina-abort, dito, literal na tao. Pero sa side ko naman, kasi imagine niyo una sa lahat, yung medical field natin, medical sector, sa pagbabayad ng hospital bills, napakamahal eh. Imagine niyo may isa kayong, wag sabihin ko sana may isa kayo, masama yun eh. For example, may ibang tao, sabihin natin ibang tao na mahirap lang sila, tapos talagang parang 0.1% chance na lang siya mabuhay through life, sa life support. Tapos yung ayaw mo pa siyang mercy killing kasi wala na talaga siyang choice, and then wala na ring pangbayad yung relatives niya. So parang parang magandang point lang tignan yun in terms of hindi naman parang napaka-perfect na bawal talaga pumatay. Ito talaga yung clear objectives ko. Parang may mga circumstances na makikita natin na parang mas okay na nga para sa tao na, alam mo yun, mag-end na yung suffering niya through sa euthanasia. So, personally, I think this should be legalized. Pero I'm not saying na dapat lahat na, for example, kahit 97% chance pa niya gusto mabuhay, sobrang depressed lang siya, ayaw niya na mabuhay, gagamitin niya tong concept na to para doon. Pero siguro ililegalize siya, and then more on sa mga limitations na isa-set para in terms of sa implementation di siya ma-abuse. So yun yung sa side ko. Kayo guys, si Mr. Robert BRIZ, anong take mo dito?
Personally, ang aking take is basically pag the act of euthanasia kasi this is basically on how it is portrayed based on the certain circumstances. For example, like what you said, di ba, na if we prolong the suffering of that patient, is it better if we just do the act just to ease the suffering, or pabayaan na mamatay pero nasasaktan siya? Parang ganun. Basically, the act itself, it's neither right or tama or mali Hindi siya tama or mali Kasi depende rin to sa tao kung gusto niya i-accomplish nitong act or hindi. Like what sinabi ni ARIEN, basically this is an act that it needs to be decided based on the person, him or herself, that if he or she should take euthanasia to ease yung suffering niya, or gusto niya na mamatay, mercy killing, ganun. So, my opinion, euthanasia should be legalized but should not be used or abused in a way that it is another take ng mga ibang tao na parang another way of suicide, parang ganun. May cases kasi na pwedeng i-abuse ito parang ganun. Like if the way of how euthanasia is used, na kung pwede ba na kung moral ba to, tama or hindi. Basically yun yung aking point.
Okay. Good take siguro. Mostly sa tingin ko 3 out of 3 pa lang tayo ngayon nag-share ng opinions, pero mostly more on positive or legalizing euthanasia. So let's hear from Mr. De La Cruz kung anong take niya dito sa idea na to.
Well, personally kasi religious country tayo So medyo mahirap talagang illegalize sa Pilipinas kasi maraming grupo na against like dito sa euthanasia. Pero feeling ko naman as time goes by, may iba naman siguro tong perspective ng iba. Like, ewan ko lang sa church kasi against talaga sila dito according sa commandment, sa 5th commandment ba yan? Ayaw talaga nila ng ganitong way. So, nagde-debate pa rin sila dito about legalizing kahit sa ibang bansa, di lang naman sa Pilipinas. So, widespread issue pa rin to. Pero for now kasi yung Pilipinas talaga, hindi ko lang alam kung malilegalize talaga nila to. Yun lang naman yung take ko. Pero pro ako dito. Gusto ko tong legalize.
And lastly, Mr. AGNO, ano yung masasabi mo sa euthanasia?
Yes, I also do want this to be legalized in our country, but just like Sir De La Cruz said, it is hard to legalize here because of the religious group. just like my recent experience with my grandmother, where there was a bit of a fight between this side of the family and the other side of the family, where because my grandmother is like 95 years old, so it was pretty hard for her already, since she has come a very long way. So we all wanted her to be able to rest in peace, but of course there has been an argument between this with a religious family. So yes, it is definitely hard, but it is something that not everyone wants to see their loved ones to continue suffering, which also hurts their hearts. So yeah, that's my take, that it's not to be taken lightly, it's not to be used as an abuse, but it's something of a decision that everyone is on unison.
Oh, okay. It seems like everyone has already completed with sharing their thoughts with regards to euthanasia. So overall, most of us agree, but we also have to keep in mind that this is not a light topic. It's very complex. We need to understand more about this and the legal sanctions if it's going to be implemented in the Philippines. So moving on to our second topic with regards to ethics pa rin. Here's my topic that I want to would want to share to you guys. Basically, the title of this topic or an article is Self-Driving Trolley System. How will future AI systems make the most ethical choices for us? So, artificial intelligence is already making decisions in the field of business, healthcare, and manufacturing. But AI algorithms generally still get help from people applying checks and making the final call. So, yun nga, as, di ba, mostly ITCS professionals or magiging professionals tayo, we have a really thorough understanding of how AI works. Basically, it's just an algorithm. It's how we program it, and it just learns from data that's feeding in order to make it work. So basically, parang AI hindi talaga siya kusa nag-iisip eh. Meron talagang programmer behind that na gumagawa ng algorithm and yung mga data and statistics to implement it. So, di ba sa pop culture, it has been long portrayed yung pinaka-general distrust of AI. For example, 2004 sci-fi movie, yung iRobot, played by Will Smith, is suspicious of robots being rescued by one from a car crash. Basically, TLDR, maraming mga sci-fi movies na sinoshow yung AI, world domination, makikipaglaban tayo mga humans sa AI kasi magkakaroon sila ng sariling intelligence. But unlike humans, robots lack moral conscience and follow ethics programmed into them. At the same time, human morality is highly viable. So the right thing to do in the situation will depend on how you ask. For machines to help us to our full potential, we need to make sure that they behave ethically. So the question becomes, how do ethics and AI developers and engineers influence the decisions made in AI? So may mga philosophical debates dito with regards sa AI. Ang magandang, for example, pwede siguro nating discuss na scenario. For example, nauuso ngayon mga Tesla, mga self-driving vehicles which are AI projects, di ba? Anong mangyayari, for example, yung AI na yun, yung AI car mo, self-driving car, nakasagasa or nakapatay ng tao? Sino ang may kasalanan doon? Kung yung driver ba, yung AI mismo na sasakyan, or di ba AI yun, parang di naman talaga siya tao, or yung mga developers. So currently, sobrang heated debate pa to. AI is not good or evil, depende talaga sa perception ng tao. Pero with private companies, public organizations, and research institutions have their own guidelines for ethical AI, the United Nations has recommended developing what they call a comprehensive global standard setting instrument to provide global ethical framework and ensure human rights are protected. So, una sa lahat, before ko sagutin yung sarili ko ring tanong na ano mangyayari pag, for example, pinakasagasan ng self-driving vehicle. I think yung AI, mahirap talaga siya i-correlate sa yung humanitarian aspect ng tao. Kasi ang pinoprogram lang natin sa UI is yung mga more on data and statistics, more on numerical values, yung mga accuracy, yung mga ganyan. Pero pag, for example, in a life, sa buhay ng tao, hindi lang naman, di ba, parang hindi lang naman numerical reasons ang ginagamit natin to come up with our decisions. So for example, yun nga, kung pili tayo kung sino papatayin natin, mahirap yun eh. Kasi tao tayo, may mga conscience tayo, meron tayong mga emotions. So overall, I think with regards sa AI, dapat talaga may mga specific things lang na parang mga concepts na paggamitan ng AI kasi in all, pag lahat talaga pinush natin lahat sa AI, sa tingin ko magiging negative talaga yun overall. So dun sa tanong ko naman, I think ang magiging, para sa akin ang may problem dyan, yung tao talaga na bumibili ng AI vehicle. Kasi parang ginagawa niyang excuse, mas mapapadali yung buhay ko, gamitin ko lang tong mga automated functions na to, ganun lang. Pero 'di ba, for example, sa mga AI vehicles, semi-automatic pa rin siya eh. May tao pa rin na kailangan nandun sa vehicle na 'yon in order to mapagana siya yung self-driving car. So overall, I think sa atin talaga as humans, mga AI developers, sa mga tao, mga bibili na AI, na kailangan na tignan ng maigi kung ano yung possible na mangyari pag ginamit ng AI, mga repercussions, at saka talagang pag-aralan ng maigi. Kasi napaka-complex ng AI. Now, which is yun nga, with the growth, for sure, maraming further developments with regards sa AI tapos sa use nito sa society natin. Pero, Arien, ano sa tingin mo? Personal take mo na lang. Kahit wag na yung question kung masyadong complex din natin yung question. Personal take mo sa use of AI, more specifically dun sa self-driving cars.
Regarding sa take mo is na parang sabi mo fault nga nung bumili yung self-driving cars nun since di naman talaga, di naman, parang lagi sila nagde-depend sila sa AI instead na parang assistance lang siya dapat. So yun nga, para sa akin, so sila nga may fault. And I guess sabi mo in the future, maybe baka maging talaga, parang mais talaga yung self-driving, di na talaga kailangan tingnan. Pero for now is assistance lang yung AI sa car, and there should be a backup, which is yung human na nasa loob ng car in the driver's seat. Yun lang naman yung take sa point mo, question.
Si Mr. Robert BRIZ naman, anong take mo sa AI cars?
My take ko is it's too early to tell na if whether this AI, of course, it is to blame kung may nangyaring accident or yung tao ba o driver or developer. But of course, since this kind of feature na ay isang bago pa, it usually depends na if the driver or the developers are at fault when it comes to these situations. Kasi syempre, itong bagay na ito kailangan pa ng further testing, further other kinds of experiments kung kaya ba ng AI i-figure out na kung paano niya i-handle yung mga ganitong situations. Basically, the trolley problem itself. So it might take usually the use of AI is not really, I think, an ethical way, but it depends pa rin ito sa mga driver himself or herself. That's my point.
Moving on naman sa take ni Mr. De La Cruz.
So far naman, I think of like Tesla, convenience lang, pero kailangan talaga ng supervision kasi it's still learning. Gumagamit sila ng machine learning doon. So, technically, fault pa rin ng driver yon kung magka-disgrasya. Pero feeling ko may part rin ng developer doon kasi merong issue na nagkaka-glitch yung like yung assistance. Minsan nagsuswerve, pero rare cases naman. Pero kasi kung ano yung sisisihin, feeling ko talaga yung tower naman eh. So, same take rin ako doon sa self-driving cars. So, yun lang naman yung take ko doon.
And lastly, before moving on sa last topic, si Mr. Agno.
Yeah, so my take on this is that, yes, I agree with what De La Cruz said and what BRIZ also said, that this tech or AI would always need a lot of steps and a lot of experiments and tests before it can go out. Because if there's going to be this sort of problems where, just as De La Cruz said, it will swerve or it will do some glitch, it is definitely on the developer side. But of course, it will also be depending on the driver, where they still have to supervise over the tech they buy or that they're driving. Because just because you have an automated car, trolley or car, doesn't mean you can just sleep while driving 6 kilometers away. So yeah, that's my take.
Okay, wrapping that topic up, mostly nga, yun nga, sinabi natin na halos lahat na may fault pa rin dito yung tao kasi yung AI naman hindi niya naman ginawa yung sarili niya na ganun. More on sa developer, sa gumagamit, and din dun kasi nag-program ng AI. So I think we need to be more careful about this development in technology. So moving on, siguro third topic natin to be discussed by Mr. BRIZ. Yeah.
So for this topic, which is the limits of philosophical ethics, basically it talks about yung mga on how strategic flexibility is used in certain moral dilemmas or ethical dilemmas. So ano yung strategic flexibility? So ito yung the way how people respond or adapt to the changes in a certain situation. Basically, you can apply this sa mga bagay na kunwari, isa kang transfer student sa isang school. So basically, you need to adapt. You need to need to know how to fit in. So for this article, it talks about how it works on how people work out in a workforce through the disputes with other people. So usually, in certain working area, we have to express our reasons or sentiments explicitly in a certain situation. Like, kung nag-agree pa tayo sa isang project, nag-disagree, or nag-agree pa tayo and other opinions ng what na i-adagdag para ma-improve yung project, parang ganun. So basically, through experiences in these such situations or certain dilemmas, we become more proficient in dealing with such conflicts over time. We can detect what other kinds of attention that needs to be addressed or deciding how to continue based on our impressions or other parties involved. So basically, ito yung the way on how we compel certain situations and certain encounters by using strategic flexibility. Well, for example, basically yung mga ibang examples nyo kanina, which is the AI and the other one, which is the euthanasia. Basically, in using these types of situations in an ethical framework, it is relative. We can be sure what is the right, correct way, or what is the wrong, avoiding the wrong situation. Because ethics itself is relative. Its own term is its limitation. Yun yung limitation ng mismong ethics. It's the concepts, the situations, the circumstances of what makes an ethical structure moral to us social people, to us social humans. For example, kunwari ang isang tao, let's say sundalo ka, if you try to kill people on a certain battlefield, isa ka bang criminal, murderer, or you're just fighting for yourself, for your country? Or kung isa kang doktor, like for example, you're treating a patient, 60% ang kanyang survival rate, but still you failed. Is it your fault that you killed the patient? Or hindi? O isa kang architect, engineer, you want to build pero you need to demolish something or kailangan tanggalin, like for example yung mga squatter area dyan sa ibang parts sa Manila, which is can be very a bad thing to them because wala silang malilipatan, mahirap lumipat, walang bahay, ganun. That is what our limitation of our ethics. It is what guided by other factors. There are always 100 opportunities, 100 theories to affect what kind of choices do you make. So basically, in this type of situation, in my take, when it comes to the strategic flexibility, basically, if we try to be in that situation, let's say ako yung doktor na hindi ko na ligtas yung patient, basically, when it comes to these situations, is it our fault or hindi? In my case, usually it depends. It depends on how you take that responsibility. Like, basically, when it comes to these situations, we should never let our emotions obscure our decisions when it comes to these situations. In the trolley problem, in the trolley problem where you need to save people, like for example, there's like 2 tracks, right? 5, kasi isang tao na stuck doon. So in your decision, what will you do? Will you do it based on your emotions or based on what you think it's right? So basically, I think that avoiding emotions is what is the right take in these kinds of situations, because emotions obscure our decisions. We should never let it consume us, but instead face the important facts on what should be the most positive thing that could happen. Basically, that's my take. So for you guys, ARIEN, in terms, para dalian na lang natin itong this type of art topic. What will you do if a certain situation will, like the trolley problem, what will you do in terms of what you believe in? Like, should you do it or should you not do it? Or basically, wag mo na lang pansinin, parang ganun.
I guess I think this is a hard question.
Yeah, basic.
Parang Miss Universe to
Basically, very complex, very complicated yung aking article. But yeah, based on that question, what do you think? Should you believe in instead of thinking what is right?
Wala po masyado maisip.
Itatag team kita. Sige, ako nasasagot. Arian ako nasasagot. Ako siguro ang take ko dyan, ang question is, gagawin mo ba yung alam mong tama or basta more on dun sa concept ng ethics eh. Sa tingin ko ay parang yung ethics kasi parang social construct yan.
Yeah.
As humans, 'di ba? Sinaunang panahon wala pang ethics. Mga cavemen pa lang tayo noon, wala pa tayong society as a whole. So basically parang yung ethics lang talaga diyan para siyang measure sa ating society in order to function properly na lumalabas. Kaya siya na-implement sa society natin para to keep check on certain things na medyo parang crucial na sa ating pagka-humanity. Kasi more on sa emotional, more on sa thoughts natin tong ethics eh. So, very complex tong problem. So, I think, personally, yung society natin, binubuo talaga siya ng ethics eh. So, ako kahit alam ko na tama, alam ko na kahit mali yung ethics na, for example, ayoko na magbigay ng example siguro. Sabihin na lang natin, for example, may isang social norm through ethics na alam mong mali, pero ginagawa pa rin ng mga tao. Siguro, alam mo na mali, maganda yun sa sarili mong point na alam mo yung tama't mali. Pero kasi, personally, ikaw ba may magagawa ka para mabago yun? Siguro dun yung magandang course of discussion na mangyayari. Ano yung parang role ng ethics sa isang taong katulad ko lang? Diba? Parang tagasunod lang tayo. Nakasulat na yan sa libro yung ethics eh. So, more on, maganda siguro na alam mo yung tama't mali, pero in overall, yun nga, consume na tayo sa society, ito na yung ethical norms natin, hindi mo rin, parang wala ka rin magagawa eh. Ipa-follow mo lang ethics, pero at least, alam mo sa sarili mo na parang dapat may magbago. Siguro sa sarili mo na rin yun, gumawa ka ng minor steps para mabago yung mga ibang ethical issues na parang nanonormalize sa society natin. Ayun lang siguro yung take ko dito. Kayo guys, may take pa kayo?
Sa akin kasi medyo complicated talaga tong ethics eh. So, ang ethical role lang naman natin dito is may responsibility tayo to recognize multiple principles at kung mali ba yun or tama in this society. Yun nga yung complicated part kasi sa iba mali tapos sa atin naman tama. So, may conflict minsan. So, sa culture rin naman yan. So, complicated na topic talaga siya at mahirap talagang i-distinguish yung pinaka-neutral way na pagsabi nito. Yung take ko lang naman dito is sa ethics is you just have to know what is right and wrong. Yun lang naman. Pero you have to know bakit siya mali or bakit siya tama. Yun lang naman sa akin.
I can wholeheartedly agree with that. This kind of applies also to ARIEN's topic where we have to use euthanasia, whether it is right or, I mean, there's going to be a conflict between two parties always, that if this is going to be right to do or is this going to be wrong to do. But at the same time, it will always come down to the decisions that one person can do if what they think is right. So that's for my take.
So moving on sa another relevant article with regards to ethics to be presented by Mr. De La Cruz.
So based on my findings, let us first know what is e-commerce. So e-commerce is a platform where it involves the exchange of product and services over the internet. So basically web shopping, and then you can say it is like Lazada, Shopee, eBay, mga kinds of e-commerce. And then merong online marketplaces, may bidding rin. So firstly, ano ang mga ethical issues dito regarding e-commerce? First would be scalping. So ang scalping, basically sa US, they don't allow scalping, or maybe there are parts na allowed. I don't know in the Philippines kung I think pwede pang mag-scalp, like ticket scalping. Pero it's not ethically right to do that during event, like tinataasan nila yung presyo. And then there are other ethical issues such as inaccurate product listing, like bait and switching method, wherein you bait your customer with a good picture of the product, like dress, like maganda siya tignan sa preview, tapos pag in-order mo, hindi siya yung in-expect mong quality, like parang galing Divisoria lang. Tapos there are some regulations like tax, marketing laws, at saka ito like counterfeit and mga authentic products, like galing China, you don't know the ratings, tapos nag-order ka lang sa global, like you just ordered, so ang expect mo dun is usually fake siya, because I mean, I'm not saying it's from China kagad like you just impulsive buying. So marami pa namang issues like data breach, pero yes, sa cybersecurity na siya. Pero ang may take lang naman sa akin dito is sa e-commerce, you can meet good buyers, sellers. You can meet sellers in person. Pero usually kasi like sa wish.com, it's not a good place to buy items. So you need to expect that it's not good. It's fake, like that. So in some cases, smuggling is possible too sa e-commerce. So careful lang kasi baka maapektuhan rin kayo doon. So, imprisonment. So ang take ko lang naman dito is there are ethical decisions in e-commerce, pero so far scalping it should not be allowed in the Philippines, and also accurate product listing. Ang issue lang is they should warrant a higher punishment or higher degree of punishment, kasi kulang talaga minsan sa laws ng Philippines and maraming na-exploit. Yun lang naman ang take ko.
Oo nga ngayon mostly lahat ng buy and sell umiikot sa e-commerce Maraming naduduga. So, ikaw ba Arien, meron ka bang personal experience or general take, overall take dito sa e-commerce?
Sa e-commerce naman is yun nga yung scalping. So, yung napapansin ko ngayon sa market, lalo na sa tech side, which is yung kunyari, mga consoles, mga GPU, ganun, is bibilin ng mas mura, tas bebenta ng mas mahal. Yun, parang yun lagi na papansin ko, which is yung scalping nga. And I think mas maganda kung magkaroon ng laws about this, I guess.
Okay, I guess ako naman siguro, personal take ko. Personally ako, kasi ako parang ang tawag dito, parang tinitignan ko talaga na maigi yung bibilin ko sa e-commerce Sa site ko siguro, ganun lang talagang titignan mo yung seller, maganda ba itong rating, may mas mura ba. Pero kasi yun nga, karamihan din ng mga tao, medyo hindi in the know-hows ng e-commerce, dun talaga nadadali. Yung katulad nga ng mga sinabing ethical issues ni Mr. De La Cruz. Siguro, ang pinaka-prevalent ngayon, mga counterfeit nga. Actually, hindi nga lang sa e-commerce to. Meron rin sa mga Facebook, di ba? Or ano pang iba't ibang platforms yung mga nagbebenta ng mga products, luxury products. Tapos, ang mura-mura, kailan ka makakabili ng Gucci, 5,000 lang. Hindi yata makatotohanan yun, pero maraming nauuto. So, meron nga tayong mga laws set in place, yung mga anti-counterfeit, etc. etc. Pero more on, ang gusto ko talagang ma-explore dito is yung pagbibigay ng knowledge sa overall users, sa mga gumagamit ng e-commerce platforms para maintindihan nila kung ano yung mga tamang gawin at saka yung mga dapat hindi gawin para hindi sila maging victims ng mga ganitong issues with regard sa e-commerce. So yun lang naman siguro yung take ko dito. Si Mr. BRIZ.
For my opinion, of course, the use of scalping is usually, I'm against scalping because itong act na to manipulative eh. Kasi pwede mo i-adjust yung price na hindi naman fair or sobrang taas naman, parang dinadaya naman yung mismong e-commerce itself. Well, in terms of e-commerce kasi just like what you said, Christian, dapat kasi ang e-commerce, I think this needs to be more in depth to other people so that pag gumagamit sila bumibili sila ng gamit online, dapat alam nila yung mga yung mga presyo, mismong quality, yung mismong price, like kung totoo ba to or hindi. Kasi pag mostly online shopping kasi basically kahit sinong tao pwede na magbenta eh. Parang ganun. But of course, kailangan if in certain online shopping platforms, there needs to be a form of fair use of e-commerce na para dapat fair yung pagbebili at fair dapat yung pagbebenta ng isang product. Basically, yun ang aking opinion regarding e-commerce.
Lastly, Mr. Agno.
So yeah, my take on this is that yes, the sellers must get punished for this. Mostly, I guess what they can do about this is just like from a site like Binance, where if there's a potential scam between the buyer and seller, the seller's account will get suspended. And it will also get fined for how many days. So I wish this would also be put in law for most of these scammers. And yeah, of course, there's also that the audience or the users being tricked into buying this sort of stuff without actually looking at the description, the title, or the review. They'll just look at the price, like iPhone 8 at 200 pesos. No way. But apparently it's just a phone case, and that's how people get themselves scammed, or not really scammed, more like it's them tricking themselves into buying that without actually looking at the description itself. So yes, that's my take.
Okay, so next naman tayo sa article to be discussed by Mr. Kyle Carlos.
Thank you, Mr. Ancheta. Billionaires are hoarding so much money while others barely have enough to afford basic necessities like food and medicine. The average American would need to work for 2.8 million years to earn what Bezos already had in 2019. This was taken from an article But by now it would be even more. Billionaire wealth is twice the total wealth of the bottom 50% of America, and all the world's billionaires have more wealth than 60% of Earth's population. But what if the rich were taxed higher? The richest 1% of America owns almost 40% of all the wealth but pays only 20% of all the taxes. According to a report published in The Guardian, increasing billionaires' tax by just 10% points would just about increase $3 trillion and enough to make all college free at public universities. So, additionally, like billionaires also have too much political power. They control whether certain laws will or should be passed, and like I said, they control whether or not it's good for them. So if they don't like the law, they basically have the power to just alter it or just not go with it. And so matatanong ko lang sa inyo is like, meron ba talagang such a thing as an ethical billionaire? Kung alam natin na most likely yung billionaires na yon is unethical yung pag-extract nila ng pera. Hindi sila nagbabayad ng mga taxes through loopholes. Masyado silang malaking impact to politics. So ayun nga, tama ba na gina-glorify natin sila, mga billionaires? Like, is it right that sila yung pinag-aano natin, parang ina-idolize natin? So anyone, any comments?
Arien, baka gusto mo i-share yung opinion mo doon?
I guess dito naman sa atin is I guess sa Philippines naman is billionaires. Mostly I don't think we should idolize them. Yun pong ganun yun. Kung tama ba pagka sa question. I guess since mostly napapansin ko is hindi naman lahat, pero may mga billionaires na yun nga nasa political power, which is mostly nandun sila sa power na yun since mayaman sila, and sometimes na manipulative sila, and lastly is yung manipulation, which can lead to sometimes nag-evade sila in terms of the law in our country, like ma-evade nila yung pagkakulong sa nila or even tax evasion. Siguro yan lang yung take ko.
Ako naman siguro, ang take ko, ang pinaka-question dito is there such a thing as an ethical billionaire? Ako, clear lang answer ko. I think walang ethical billionaires, pero I believe na merong ethical millionaire. Kasi imagine niyo, for example, sino ba magandang example? Si Jeff Bezos. Diba? Siya yung parang richest man, diba? Ang dami niyang US billions eh. Mga billions of dollars. Tapos merong maraming mga tao na nahihirapan, mga may hirap, di nakakain. Tapos itong taong na to, nakikita naman niya. So, okay lang siguro na parang magkaroon siya ng charity events or etc. Siguro mas magiging okay yun. Kasi 'di ba, parang sa social class talaga napaka unbalanced eh. Sobrang yaman tapos may mga sobrang hirap. So siguro ako nakikita ko mga billionaires hindi sila ethically just kasi alam naman nila na may magagawa pa silang mas malaking bagay sa mundo na i-share yung wealth nila or like through charity work nga. Kailangan consistent yun. Pero kung consistent nga yun, syempre marami ka rin ibibigay na pera doon. So most likely, hindi ka magiging billionaire kung ganun. Mostly talaga yung mga billionaires, tinitignan nila yung pag-progress ng company nila, yung shares nila, more on themselves nila tinitignan, yung growth of themselves mostly, hindi sa growth of others. Pero yun nga, meron mga siguro ethical millionaires na mga CEO ng companies na hindi naman siya ganun kalaki, hindi rin siya ganun kayaman, pero ginagawa niya yung part niya sa society. So, siguro yun yung take ko. Si BRIZ, anong take mo?
For me, when it comes to ethical billionaire, actually wala ko masyadong alam regarding sa mga taong billionaire. But I believe na in some people na rich people themselves, na there are some that can be ethical people themselves. Na for example, si Elon Musk, basically yung mga ginagawa niya, basically yung paggamit ng pera niya is not it's a way to make people to see other inventions through his ideas. Being an ethical billionaire, millionaire, or a rich people themselves, na is how you use your money. Na hindi lang na magdo-donate ka basis na okay, that's a good act, but I think through the acts such as being an inspiration rather than being idolized is a way to give people a way on how they see the rich person himself or herself, na kung yung acts niya ba is true towards a good act or true towards a negative one. So basically yun ang aking tip.
Okay, next siguro si Mr. De La Cruz.
Basically, ang masasabi ko lang naman is, for billionaires, wala akong may isip na ethical talaga, I think, because in some form, sa tax na binabayaran nila, they have to maximize their profit, right? So, minsan pupunta sila ng lugar na mas lower yung taxes fee for their assets. So, I don't think that's ethically right. Para sa akin, So, pero for millionaire, like sa sinabi ni Christian Ancheta, merong mga ethical millionaire. I think sa Pilipinas meron naman yun siguro. Pero sa billionaire, kahit dito sa Pilipinas, I don't think so kasi in some forms meron corruption talaga. Because like sa business mind, minsan mga sa board of executives, minsan yun yung priority nila instead ng mga stakeholders. So minsan talaga profit ang hanap talaga nila. So yeah, I think ang take ko lang dito is there's no ethically right billionaire. Maybe sa public, pinapakita nila yung magagandang deeds. Pero siguro kung sa like sa mga hidden cases or may mga hidden agenda siguro, for me lang naman yun lang naman ang take ko.
Okay, last na si Mr. Agno.
For me, yes, I agree that there are not so many ethical billionaires, but so far, for people who is trying to use their political powers, most of them will just invest their money just to impress the public that this is what they do, but in reality they're just using this as an investment so that they can get the position they want politically. So are there ethical people? Yes, there are. Someone I can think about, probably not a billionaire, is Mr. Beast, and he has helped a lot of people. He also inspired a lot of billionaires or millionaires as well, that they should be able to be more giving and more probably ethical, so that they won't be seen too much as a person that just greeds over money or power. So yeah, that's my take.
Okay, so last na to. Moving on. To be shared by Mr. Agno din. His article about ghosters.
Okay, so before we start onto the topic, let me ask you all this one question. Have you ever been ghosted before?
Yes.
Yes,
Oh.
then.
Baka yun ang ghost. Baka ikaw
Yes,
yun ang
then.
ghost.
You poor souls. But yeah, back onto the topic at hand. We're going to be talking about the ethical issues of ghosting. So let's talk about ghosting. We usually know in today's dating culture. Being ghosting is a phenomenon that approximately men and women has experienced, almost all, and an almost equal number have done the ghosting. It can be done psychologically devastating, especially if this wasn't their first time. And there are a variety of violations of ethical behavior when someone ghosts another. The first is the golden rule. Just imagine what might go through the mind of the person doing the ghosting if they ask themselves how they would if the shoe was on their other foot. Another issue is ghosting breeds distrust. Moreover, it is an irresponsible behavior that occurs in part because when we communicate through a screen, we can say whatever we want or completely ignore the other party without having to personally explain one's action. So, when I think about ghosting from an ethical perspective, I am reminded that ethics is about what we do when no one's watching, even when maybe they'll feel offended if I say I chose this person over this person. So it's just better to say what you think, say what you must, and not just leave the person hanging. And yeah, that's my take. How about you guys?
Sa akin naman is yun nga, yung parang take mo lang din is don't leave the person hanging. Parang, I mean, di ko pa rin alam reason ba't nang go-ghost. Pero yun nga, yun lang.
Ako naman siguro, halos pare-pares lang naman ata tayo dito. Siguro kung ayaw niya talaga yung tao, at least magkaroon siya ng courtesy na sabihin na ayaw niya na or makikipag-break na siya. Hindi yung tipong wala lang. Diba? Ayun lang siguro yung take ko.
Ako naman, basically, I think kasi yung mga ganyang action, it's best na you just talk through it personally or basically on person. Kasi pag mga ganyang act kasi parang parang sinaano ko lang, pinabayaan ka lang, ganun.
Para sa akin naman, yung ghosting kasi usually nakikita natin ng mga memes yan sa Facebook eh. Pero kung ikaw naman yung i-ghost, like masasaktan ka rin naman talaga. So you just have to talk it out talaga. Pero if ini-ignore ka naman talaga, wala tayong magagawa eh. It's just that she doesn't want you like that, okay? Or she doesn't want to
Tama.
talk to you.
Tama.
Or that's that. Yun na naman ang take ko. So, wala eh.
Okay lang yan, Danilo. Feel ka namin.
Ayun nga, same din sa sinabi ni Danilo, kung ganun talaga is wala ka nang magagawa. So yung take ko lang naman is siguro wala lang talagang energy, like yung manggo-ghost is wala talagang energy, lalo na pag hindi ganun ka-deep yung relationship. Wala siyang energy para makipag-usap ng ganun ka-deep since hindi naman ganun ka-deep yung relationship. Pero ibang usapan na yung meron na kayong pinagsamahan, ganun. So, yun lang naman yung take ko.
So I think ay na yung lahat ng articles na gusto nating i-discuss with regard to ethical frameworks of various philosophies. Medyo fruitful, marami tayong natutunan, marami tayong mga iba't ibang concepts na na-associate sa ethics such as technology, e-commerce, yun nga, kahit nga love life na napapadpad pa rin sa ethics, may ethics pa rin siya. So, I think this would be the conclusion of episode 2 ng ating podcast, G1 Podcast. This has been your host, Christian, and thank you for listening. Stay safe, everyone.